This is a Viva PR podcast.
I've always loved the idea of having an agency where you kind of effectively grow your own. I kind of love deferring and talking to the younger people in our business. You're good enough, you're old enough. You know, you need a bit of luck, but you make your own luck. Sometimes you've got to make that happen. You've got to have the right attitude, the right approach. You've got to be positive. You've got to make shit happen. This is a bloody brilliant job. You get to have tons of fun and enjoy it. Never stop having fun.
Hello and welcome back to PR in the Real World with me, Tony Garner, for part two of our special with the co-founder and agency guru behind Frank, the PR agency that's been one of our industry leaders for the past quarter of a century. In part two, Graham looks at the side of things that we didn't touch on last time, the culture, the leadership issues, and also some of the kind of balance between life and health and happiness. And we get quite deep at times, but you'll love it. If you loved part one, you'll absolutely love part two. And if you didn't hear part one, where have you been? Let's crack on.
So Graham, welcome back. Really good of you to join us again. We talked in the previous episode about how you set Frank up and the point of difference and talkability and be a dick. I'm interested in some of your thoughts on people, and you must have employed a fair few in the last 25 years. And what are the kind of lessons learned from dealing with people?
I think the first lesson, I've always loved the idea of having an agency where you kind of effectively grow your own and trying to take people up the ranks from a junior level, starter level. You know, they're much more loyal, I found. There's a lot more passion and energy, and they live and breathe your culture. And when we talked about last week, you know, a culture that is all about being a dick and creating talkability. It's sort of slightly different to what other agencies espouse, and you know, no time sheets and all that sort of stuff. So, you know, if we bring our people up, then they come from that sort of background, it's maybe hard to adapt or harder for them to sometimes get it. So, people that live and breathe your culture are really exciting, I think, and I love the fact that, you know, Frank has always been a breeding ground out for talent. Obviously, you can't always hire from startup or starter level, but to make sure that your team has at its core a lot of homegrown talent, I think is really important. And also to just as a founder, as an owner of a business, someone running a business, to be really proud about seeing people grow and develop. And you know, it gives me a lot of pleasure to see so many Frank alumni now doing such amazing things with other agencies, either in-house, sometimes at their own agencies that they set up. And, you know, a lot of times we're now up against them, competing against them. I'm thinking, I can't believe that I created this monster. And now we've got to compete against this because they're trying to eat our lunch. But that's exciting. And to me, you know, I get a lot of pleasure out of it, a lot of joy, a lot of satisfaction at doing it. If anyone wants to have a look on my LinkedIn, you know, we have a series which I do regularly called Legends of Frank, where we profile a lot of these people. Some of them, again, joined Frank from entry-level starter. Some of them have grown within it. And you know, we profile them, where they're at now, and how they've gone on to achieve such wonderful things in their career. And it makes me really proud, you know, from a people point of view to do that. I think the other thing, particularly, you know, my other learning from it is I use the phrase, if you're good enough, you're old enough. And you know, I was lucky in my career that I didn't really have any obstacles in my way when I was growing and developing. And so at a relatively young age, I could, you know, get promotions that maybe are a bit harder to get now. I don't think that's the case here at Frank, and hopefully the culture still exists where it doesn't really matter how old you are. If you're good enough, then you get your promotion, then you can grow and develop. And I don't think clients care how old someone is. They care much more about attitude and enthusiasm. You know, I see lots of salary surveys, for example, whereby they'll put a different level and they'll put the average age of that level, and it's like 10 years older sometimes than the average age that level and that employee at Frank. And I think it's exciting to get people doing these roles younger. It's much more, people feel as they've achieved a lot more. And I think to do that, to get them to be good enough is, even if they're not as old as other people, you've got to throw people in the deep end a bit more and take a bit of a risk with people. And I always like to say, Frank, we're happy to throw people in the deep end, but we definitely don't let them drown. If we're struggling a bit or they can't deal with something, we're right in there with as a lifeguard might jump in the water to rescue them and bail in and do it. But hopefully they will swim. And or the next time they swim. And if they do, I tell you, they just go on leaps and bounds and progress a lot quicker than other people who aren't given the opportunity to do that. So we'll always give people the opportunity to do that. I think the other thing with people that's really important is, you always, when you're building and growing an agency, every agency is going to leavers. And I've always had the mindset and the policy is that you want to let every leaver go with their heads held high. Send people off on a high with all the respect and admiration that you can in the world. However, sometimes you might be biting your tongue a little bit, or the truth of how that person or the circumstances about how that person has left. You've got to get over it and look at the bigger picture, I think, of how the remainder of the staff will take it, how they respect you for it, and how they'll like the agency more as a result of that as well, and feel it's a place that values people a lot more. So I think you've got to get over your own personal pride sometimes, and let everyone leave. And you're always going to have leavers. Part and parcel of agency life, and kind of deal with it, but deal with it in a really nice way. And I remember in my first job, way before Frank, as soon as you had, I didn't resign from it, but if other people did resign, they were immediately treated like the dirt on the boss's shoes. They were persona non grata. They knew that, they were, kind of being looked down upon, and it wasn't, I hated it. If they had to work out a notice period, it was the most horrendous experience for them. And other people didn't like that, who were staying at the agency. It didn't send off a very good impression or give out a very good impression of the agency, I don't think either. So that's really important.
Do you have any kind of inkling of over the years roughly how many people you've employed and who's been through the doors?
I do. According to my stats, and we keep track of it, and I did this for our 25th year, it's our 25th anniversary this year. I did have a little tracker of it, and we have so far employed 624 and counting. Now, I will say that number 625 because I just had a little toilet break, and I was talking to May Atwood, who has become employee number 625. She got the job as a trainee account executive or junior account executive yesterday. So she got offered a full-time role, which she has accepted. Again, talking about bringing people from early doors, growing your own. She is a great example of growing your own. And she also has a lovely story, which is her mum, Lee, her name is, was back in the day when I was at Lim Franks and my first ever job, used to have secretaries and PAs in those days. She was my PA secretary, her mum. And when I set up Frank in September 2000, Lee was one of the people that I took with me as the general organizer, get shit done, sort us out of the mess that we're in when we're just trying to win clients and grow an agency. You need someone that's going to keep you organized and, make sure the phones work, make sure your diary's sorted, make sure that, this delivery is whatever.
The glue that holds it all together.
She was the glue that holds it together. So she was employee number 1, 2, or 3, I can't remember, of Frank back in the day. And now, fast forward 25 years, and her daughter, who wasn't even a twinkle in her eye at that time, is now employee number 625. So we've employed now 625 people. We've also had, and probably more this week, we've had a new intake. We take 2 or 3 work experience people every 3 weeks. We've had 1,087 work experience placements that we've given to people, and I wouldn't even know how many hundreds of those have ended up working within the PR industry and have got excited about a career in the PR as a result of their placement that they might have done at Frank at some stage. But,
quite a lot of mortgages you've helped pay down the years, that, isn't it? Yeah. No,
so if anyone can still afford a mortgage, but yeah.
I'm talking to you from the frozen north. It's slightly easier up here.
London, yeah.
In terms of, one of the kind of beliefs, you've always believed in equity sharing, and like us here at Viva, you've now gone down the EOT route. But tell us about the idea that giving employees a stake in the business and your thoughts on that.
Well, I was like that. I was like the idea when I set up the business. It was I just had the twins, and I wanted a life. I wanted to, kind of had still have got a beautiful wife, and I kind of love the sort of family side of it. Having it all to myself, which I could have done, I kind of could have tried to grasp as much of the agency as I wanted for myself. I didn't think that was, going to work out so well from a personal point of view, but I don't think it works out so well from a business point of view, because it was exciting for me to have other equity partners in the business. And we did from the get-go. And Nadia and Andrew were also equity partners in the business, because they felt the ownership and were invested in there as much as I was. And I didn't have to be worried that if I did go off and once, be home for bath time, I didn't have to then worry about what emails I was going to missing, because we could all pick up for each other. Or if I wanted to have a break for a week down to the seaside or whatever, I could do that without having to be on the email the whole time, looking at what was missing and contactable 24/7, 365. So I wanted quality of life, and quantity of equity wasn't so important to me. That was, I guess everyone's different, but that was one of my principles, and I felt that excited and infused more people if they could have some skin in the game. And fast forward to last year, July 2024, where we transitioned, like I said, to being an employee ownership trust, and everyone that works here are now a beneficiary. So technically, they're, if you like, the owners or the beneficial owners of Frank. And for me, that was a lovely way to come sort of full circle for me, because obviously in between that, we've had different iterations of the agency with different types of ownership along the way. It was lovely once I'd taken the business independent again, which I did in 2021 via an MBO. It was nice then to try and get the business back on track, which I did from 2021 to 2024, and then work out some longer term way that you could get everyone excited about the business for however long that'll be, I don't know, but certainly for the foreseeable future. And an EOT was a great way to do that. So I don't own anything anymore, Frank. It's nothing, because being an EOT, as you'd be aware, as a seller, which I was classified as, because I sold my shares to the EOT, you can't be a beneficiary of the EOT. So now I'm just a trustee and still chairman and founder and run this business. I'm still a director, I have all the director's responsibilities, but it's owned by these guys, and please God, they'll get to benefit it, out of it as much as I've been lucky enough to over the years.
It's probably worth for listeners to kind of just go back a little bit and explain some of the kind of history of Frank. So set up in 2000, and you sold out midway through and then bought back, which is, if you're into the industry, you know all this, but assume that not everybody will know your story, Graham, and just give us a kind of... And some of the kind of lessons learned from those not little, but huge phases that you went.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. The biggest transformation really in the business and in my life, to be honest, if I think about it, came in 2007. So, we've been growing the business, set up in 2000 and doing pretty well, doing some of the brilliant campaigns that I talked about in the last episode. And having a lot of fun in the process, which is a very important, lesson that I'll just kind of throw in there, is have as much fun as possible, because this is a bloody brilliant job, and you can get to have tons of fun and enjoy it, because never stop having fun is definitely an important thing in that. but it was getting to 2000, 2007, getting towards that, and I was getting knocks on the door, so to speak, from intermediaries and other agency groups, and they were sort of sniffing around Frank. And I don't know, I've never built and sold an agency before. I don't know whether it's the kind of right thing to do when's the right timing to do this. But I guess the other lesson I learned is, the best time to sell your independent agency is when other people want to buy you, not necessarily you want to sell. And, I've spoken to lots of people over the years, and they say, well, I'm Graham, I've got a 5-year plan, I'm going to do this, and in 5 years' time, I'll be bang, ready to go. And I sort of listen to them and think, okay, well, maybe not. It depends if there's anyone out there to buy you when you do that in 5 years. Who knows? It might be 3 years that someone comes along, knocks on the door, and they want to buy you, and then that's the right time to sell, not when necessarily you want to do it. So definitely the right time to, to sell. So someone wants to buy you, not necessarily always according to your plan of when you want to sell. But so it got to 2007, and it seemed to be reaching a bit of a crescendo in terms of interest. And I had this UK public company called Creston, they were called there, who had been sort of interested, but they were ramping up their interest, and they made a very good offer, and I was interested in it and accepted it. We sort of said, well, I love your offer, I love your thing, but I know you want to buy it. And, I said, and they were offering a multiple of profit as their deal, as the payment for it, in a combination of cash and shares, I remember. And they said, and I said back to them, I said, so the multiple is of a higher profit. Can you keep the deal in the format it is for another year or so? Because that's when I'll grow the business to this size. This is what we're going to do over the next year. And then, but you've got to keep the framework exactly the same. And they was good to their word. When I went back a year later, I'd grown the profit. It was over £1 million. It's about 1.3 million quid, 1.35 million quid, I seem to remember. And I went back and I said, look, we've done what I said and hit the target that I wanted to hit. Are you still, we're still good with the handshake we did last year? They said, absolutely. So I thought, okay, shit, now I'm going to sell this business. We got a deal on. And not used any advisors. I'd kind of done it myself. I'd sort of gone out there. I thought, okay, what do I do next? So my wife used to work in the city, and there was someone that she knew at KPMG that I could bring in at least to ask a couple of things. I'm going to get all this paperwork, and what do I do next? And I hired a lawyer. And so anyway, the guy from KPMG had one meeting with him, said, I can help you out and kind of advise on that's great. This is the deal. And we talked about it. I said, yeah, it sounds really good. Anyway, so I saw him about a few days later. He called me up and he said, Graham, he goes, a big company, KPMG, we just had our email overnight from our Sydney office. We've got this client of our Sydney office who's coming over to London next week. They're looking at buying up independent marketing and PR agencies. Why not meet up with them? I know you've kind of got this deal in the bag already, but it's always good, for someone to think that you've got another suitor, someone else that's in the frame. So fine. Anyway, I met up with this Australian company. They were called Photon at the time. They're also a public company, this time in Australia, traded on the Australian stock exchange, the ASX. And we hit it off like our house on fire. They came over the next week, and then, and as it happens, it was kind of quite lucky, because Preston, the company that we were going to do this deal with, started to do quite badly on the stock market. They had expanded in America, hadn't gone as well as it had hoped, and I don't think the deal would have happened with us because they were under a bit of pressure. Meanwhile, these Australians have come over. And 2 weeks later, the chairman and the CEO come over. So I met the first guy. Adam was the first guy. Then Tim the chairman, and Matt, the CEO, came out a few weeks later. We got on tremendously as well. I love Aussies. They're very down to earth, very frank. Kind of work very well from our point of view. Tell it like it is. I can remember we met at, the Mayfire Hotel. The chairman, Tim, put his offer down on a napkin, wrote it out. Here's the metrics. Here's the, and it blew the offer that I'd already had from Creston. It blew it out of the water completely in terms of, it was a crazy deal at that time. But they were just the right timing. They were, an acquisitive marketing services firm. They bought a lot of agencies, bought about everyone you could buy in Australia and New Zealand that was independent. Next stop was the UK, and they were literally trying to do deals. They were well backed. They were, traded in the stock market, plenty of money behind them. They were actually backed by privately. The private shareholder was Reg Grundy, who was the guy that produced Neighbours. Remember that?
Yeah.
Famous old show. So they had that. They had a massive line of credit from the banks, and they had tons of money. And they were just throwing it about like it was going out of fashion, which suited me fine, obviously. And literally within 3-4 weeks, we'd done a deal. And I'd sort of shaken hands with them, and we'd had the paperwork, and we'd done. So in October 2007, we announced the sale to Photon, and importantly for me, it was an important one. Again, another learning, I guess, for people is when you've got someone that wants to buy you, is that I really loved doing what I did, still do, and did then, and I didn't want it to change. And there were other owners that you could get who get involved. They stick your finger in the pie. They want you to do all sorts of things with the holding company, and they change the enjoyment. And most of my mates who have sold their businesses to other groups have found out life to be pretty miserable afterwards. Yeah. And I didn't want to sell to someone that was going to make my life a misery, because I still wanted to carry on working like I had and enjoying it. And these Australians said something to me at that meeting which was so profound and was spot on, actually, is, look, and I won't put on an Aussie accent here, I could, but it'd be bad and it sound more like an Indian accent. But it was saying, Gigi, we know that even though we own the business financially, you still own the business emotionally. And it was spot on, and they had that absolute attitude. I spoke to other agencies that they'd had been bought by in Australia, and they all said, pretty much the same thing, as they won't get involved. And then after, well, they're in Australia anyway, so they're plus 11 hours.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard for them to mess about in things too much. And you know what? They were as good as gold for kind of many, many years, and allowed us to still make it feel like an independent agency, although we were, 100% owned by an Australian public company. There were a bit more stuff that we had to do from a compliance point of view, because as a public company that had to report to the city in Australia. So there was a few processes from there, and we had to follow, but nothing more than we did already as a private company before that, because we were always very rigorous about the back end. So that was a lesson in terms of when it was the right time to sell was when someone wants to buy, not when you want to sell. Then sort of fast forward to just before COVID, sort of 2016, 17, I was getting a bit fed up with PR, to be honest. I'd done 10 years since I'd sold the business to these other guys. They'd been good as gold, like I said, all along. But, and I made plenty of money, and I was pretty happy and comfortable from that point of view. I hadn't been well. I had a little health scare, a big health scare, which, as the guys in Australia called it was a kind of tap on the shoulder from the big guy upstairs, in typical Aussie fashion, which it was. And I lost the love a little bit, and I went down to a day a week. And by that time, by the way, I should say I'd managed to get, let me remind about, I'd done an earn out. So after the earn out, we did with them, when you sell a business, you do an earn out, where you earn more fragments of money based on the performance of the business after you've sold it. And we continued to knock the lights out after we sold it. The growth continued on that massive upward curve. So, ended up paying us lots of money. And it got to the end of 2012 and the end of the earn out. And I said to them, look, I love what we're doing. The business is doing well. I don't want to walk away, but I don't want to do it just as an employee anymore. Now I've finished my earn out. What can we do? And I guess my other lesson really is that the rules are there are no rules. I didn't know what to do in this situation. I didn't know the rules of what happens when you finish an earn out. And that was good not knowing. Exactly, who knows? But I thought, well, what I'd like to do is I'd like a bit of the chunk of the agency back, please, because that, I talked about ownership being important to me, and incentivizing, and that will make it incentivizing, and that the business is doing well. It's worth a lot more than when you bought it. I know you paid a lot of money for it, but it's still worth more. Let's do a deal. And so, long story short, we did a deal where they gave me back 25% of the agency to do another 4 years. wasn't on an earn-out basis. They just, if I would have walked away before then, I'd have had to give a bit of it back, depending on when I walked out. I didn't. I stayed there and I kind of did it, and I shared my 25% around with other members of the management team, which, as you know, is one of my principles in terms of doing that. But then it kind of got to 2016, 2017, and that's when I'd had the health scare, and I'd sort of done my well over 4 years of the 25%. And I kind of thought, I'm not too interested in doing this anymore. Maybe I'll take some time out. Maybe I'll play a bit more golf, all that sort of stuff. And I did. And I went down to a day a week. The Australians still wanted me involved, but happy for me to step down for a day a week. And I was still obviously a shareholder. And the business did a bit shit, to be honest. From the outside, it was fine, but we weren't really doing the campaigns that people knew about us for. Profitability was kind of not great, and we had a couple of months where we lost some money. And the Australians, gave it a bit of time, and they said to me, "GG, you've got to take a look at this business because we're really worried about it." I'd had a couple of years on the golf course, basically, and I tried not to interfere with the people that were running the business at the time. I'd let them to their own devices as much as I could, and they were great mates of mine that I'd run the business with before that. But they were both, brilliant. I guess both brilliant at being right-hand people, but not brilliant at being the main, conductors. And the business suffered a bit, and I got my mojo back effectively, and I started getting involved, and there were lots of things to put right, and lots of stuff had happened to the business which shouldn't have happened. Lots of people were in positions that shouldn't have been in those positions. The agency had lost its creative energy. We'd become too focused on the creative department as opposed to creative culture. So I started putting all that right. COVID was starting to happen as well, which wasn't helping the situation. And I've got my mojo back. And I thought, well, this is great, but I don't want to just do this for 25% of the business. And again, the no rules are the no rules. I didn't know what to do next. I don't want to do it for 25%. But I sort of wanted to get more involved again. So I did an MBO, management buyout. I'd obviously never done one before. I didn't really know. I'd heard the phrase before. I didn't really know what it involved. But all I know is I just wanted, the Australians out, and I wanted to take this business independent again, because it was fine having shareholders, but when you've got shareholders and you've got partners in the business, then you've got to do everything with someone else and consulting someone else. So long story short is I had a chat with the Australians. They morphed their management team a little bit. So it was a very different CEO to when I'd sold the business and then some of the years in between. He kind of realised that, particularly with COVID, they didn't really have a choice in it. So I, in 2021, did that. And again, not listening to the rules of how you did one, I sort of made up the deal that I wanted to achieve as I went along. And I think, there's kind of, there's loads of advisors out there. I thought, well, sure that others have done this or had this sort of journey apart from me. I'm not making it up as I go along, but experimenting as I go along and seeing what buttons push and what reactions they get. Anyway, so I did a deal with them, which was a very good deal to take it independent. I mean, 2021, Frank Buchanan, the MBA got completed. It was quite complicated because I had to deal with a public company, and they had all their process and they had a board to get through as well. But, again, I made it happen and took the business independent again, which I think sets up for hopefully, many, many more years, because I'm not sure the business would have really survived if we wouldn't have done that.
I think you've covered one of your other lessons within that answer about don't listen too much to advisors. Well,
there's a bit someone once said to me, and a lot of my mates are advisors now, so I kind of, and I do give tons of advice to people whenever they want it, but don't listen all the time to advisors, I think. I mean, and also someone said to me the other day, which is very wise, is just because an advisor, some advisors have done it, have been on a journey and done it one particular way, doesn't mean that's the only particular way. And I get that the way I did it is not the way that someone else has to do it or necessarily would do it. And they'll have a whole different set of situations and circumstances. So, I think advisors generally know the way that they might have done something in their agency experience. But I'm not suggesting that my experience with Frank was I'd say everyone else should do it the same way. I would say definitely the principles are good, Don't
No.
have any rules. Don't necessarily listen too much what other people tell you. Go with your gut a little bit. Do what feels right. Be a bit more instinctive is right. But sure, listen to some advice. But you don't always have to take it. They're not always right. Lawyers, when they give you advice, they're not always right. They're giving you what they think is the best thing. Accountants as well. They don't always give you the right advice. They give you the best advice. Doctors get it wrong the whole time. I would have listened to a doctor when I had my little tap on the shoulder. I wouldn't be here doing the podcast with you today if I listened to a doctor. And I wouldn't listen to a doctor. And I had to get second and third opinions to find out that I really had something wrong with me. So they're only doing their best. PR advisors, we're only doing our best. We don't know what the right answer is, what the right solution to a problem, whether it is if this idea is going to work or not. We think it might happen, and we're giving our best opinion. So that's the same with advisors. They're not what they say isn't always gospel and isn't the only way to do it.
I think what you said as well about what the Australian said to you about your emotional investment in Frank is fundamental here as well, isn't it? Because as an owner founder myself, there's nobody kind of more invested emotionally in the success or otherwise of Viva or the culture or what it's going to be and so on, which is why we did the EOT, because financially there might have been a more kind of like rosier picture to explore elsewhere, but to actually have that legacy potential, that was the more sensible kind of route to go down. So I think
completely I agree. And the other things we watch out for is that sometimes a buyer might say that and might not mean it. So do a bit of due diligence on top of that. And with these Aussies, they said it, but they lived it and breathed it according to all the due diligence that I did at the time as well with the other agencies that they bought. They didn't seem to ruin that emotional connection. They certainly didn't for me. Like, I'm still here, so I know I had a bit of time out, but it wasn't really to do with them and them making my life a misery. But a lot of my mates, as I said, that have sold their businesses get put through the ringer, and it's 99 times out of 100 an unhappy ending. I think mine's the happy ending, so to speak.
Yeah. You did a Nadia Comaneci style landing. For older listeners, might remember the 10 out of 10 gymnast from the. So your next lesson is don't get too high on the highs or too low on the lows. Can we unpick that a little bit?
Definitely. I mean, I think working in an agency is a bit of an emotional roller coaster, and particularly in a consumer agency where you're pitching for business every day sometimes. People are coming and going. We talk about people, you get people leaving you really like and, kind of really want to stay, but they're going off somewhere else to do something that they feel is better. Whatever. There are so many highs and lows in this business. And I'm very much someone that just likes to keep a bit of an even keel. And, you see me at the football match and Arsenal score a goal, I'm going absolutely bloody mental. So I'm different necessarily sometimes out of work, but in work, I've always tried to keep it because you can get so high now. There's so many good moments, but there's a few lows as well. And your mood really affects and translates onto the mood of people around you. And I just always think it's a much healthier way to go about it. It's just to keep a bit even about it. So if we win stuff, you won't see me dancing around the office, celebrating, cracking open the champagne, and doing all that, I kind of great news like that. When's the next pitch? That'll be me. And there was a story once using the sporting analogy, again a different one. I remember seeing an interview with Vincent Kompany after Man City won the league in dramatic fashion with that Aguero goal, which a lot of people who like football will remember, even people who don't like it will probably remember that classic bit of a commentary where he goes, Aguero! When he scores the goal in the last minute, or a minute of injury time to beat QPR to win the league in dramatic fashion. And, they did an interview with Vincent Kompany, who was the captain of Man City at the time, on the pitch after the game. Literally just must be his best moment in his career, all-time high, in terms of getting high on the highs. And he was pretty straight-faced, pretty even-keeled. Everyone else was dancing around, celebrating, stuff like that. Company said, he goes, look, how do you feel about it? They were asking, he goes, look, I'm going to really enjoy, we're going to get into the dressing room, we're going to, celebrate in the dressing room. He goes, and after I come out of that dressing room, goes, I'm preparing for next season. It's, it's all about how we go again and do it next season. amazing. You just had probably the best moment in your sporting career, and you're kind of, getting a bit high. Sure, you can enjoy the moment, but 20 minutes later, as soon as he's got changed, had a shower, he is then focusing on the next season. And I love that. It's kind of maybe a bit sad sometimes that you don't celebrate the moments as much as you could, but I kind of feel there's a payoff for that, because those lows can be quite upsetting and quite distressing. So I like having that attitude and trying to spread that. I remember when we sold the business, and Alex is still with me today. He'd always talk about it. And when we did the MBO, actually, he was talking about. So we did the MBO. We just signed a deal. It was it's a lovely deal to buy the business back. He'd come round to me on our kitchen table, doing the deal. Just sort of still, this was like one of the, still in COVID, like the second or third wave or whatever. He'd come round to me to sign the paperwork. The amount of paperwork on my kitchen desk to sign. He brought round some champagne, and he was looking forward to celebrating this big moment in his life. He's got ownership of Frank, and we got it back and stuff like that. And I said, "Sorry, mate, I got to go." We were just signed everything. I'm in a bit of a hurry. I got a dentist appointment. I just booked a dentist appointment that day to go. It wasn't like a celebration for me. It was a lovely moment when we signed up. We shook hands, had a hug. Like, great, we're gonna have a good few years together, buddy. All that sort of stuff. And that was it for me. He wanted to drink, sip champagne, enjoy it. He thought that's how you meant to experience it. I was just, no, let's go on with it. The Vincent Company type attitude really worked. And I think, the trip to the dentist was fine, as I recall as well.
Not too low on the lows, isn't it? So, you've talked about the tap on the shoulder, the health scare. I'll not drill into that. But that idea of kind of like, we've talked a lot about work, and you've put your heart and soul into Frank over the last 25 years. How do you kind of find balance? What's the lesson around that?
Well, for me, as I've got older, I think I found it more. And I think, it's become something you learn through experience. And I work 3 days a week now, so I'm a part-time employee. I pay myself 3 days a week. Well, I'm paid 3 days a week. And I've found that balance. But I was 5 days a week, 6 days a week. Kind of whatever needed to be done. It wasn't altogether always healthy. As I said, I had a bit of a health scare, which wasn't only to do with that, but couldn't have been helped by that. I wasn't very fit, put on too much weight over the years. And I think you've always got to remember that. Stay fit, stay healthy, look after yourself at the same time, physically and mentally. Again, when I was growing up in this industry, there wasn't a lot of time given to discussion around mental health. I mean, there is now, and I think it's very healthy and very good. I reckon the reason that I jacked it in or went down to a day a week, 2016, 2017, 2018, those sort of years, is I was burnt out.
Yeah.
Physically, I wasn't in as well as I should have been. But mentally, I'd gone. I remember at the time, if I got an email in my inbox and it was longer than 2 lines, I just couldn't even take it in. I didn't even want to read it. I'd sort of got to the stage where I couldn't get my head around things a bit, and I couldn't, my concentration wasn't what it should be. I just had gone. And that, definitely, if I'd have, now it's something that's well talked about and well accepted, and as I think it's a very positive sign, because I think this industry can take its toll mentally as well as physically sometimes. But realise that, look out for the warning signs, get regular checkups, talk to people about how you're feeling. Running an indie agency is stressful and can, kind of do more damage externally and internally than I mean, as I said, I found that balance, and hopefully, I can carry on finding balance for many years to come. And where necessary, I think people have got to find whatever is the right level of balance for them. You've got the ability to work more flexibly these days, with all the different tech tools that we've got available, and the agencies are much more open to it than what they were. So, look after yourself is important.
Interesting. And kind of allied to that, but like how you keep your mojo going, but you're surrounded by, lots of Gen Zs and millenniums, you're a young man in my eyes, Graham. You're a young man in my eyes. But
thank you. Well, I'm 59. I'm not afraid to say my age. I'm 59. I haven't got any grey hair because I dye it blonde, so it's kind of like that. It's still a bit grey hair on the side. Well, not dye. I use that shit that you put in when you go in the sun, and it sort of sends to go a bit blonder. So I kind of refuse to accept that bit of it. But I think from an important view, the other way you kind of stay relevant, and it's hard as you get older to stay relevant. I think is your point.
Yeah.
Is I kind of love deferring and talking to the younger people in our business. And, I love sort of spending time with them and asking them questions. And don't be afraid to ask stuff that you don't know. But importantly, don't pretend to be kind of, Mr. or Mrs. Cool, as you get older in the agency. I'm not cool anymore. I don't live the same lifestyle. I'm not out every night. I'm watching some box set with Mrs. G. I'm kind of enjoying that bit. I'm older. I kind of don't naturally consume all the reality TV shows like I would have done 15, 20 years ago because I enjoy them. I enjoy other stuff more. I'm not saying I don't enjoy them. So don't pretend. Don't be that kind of, I look at it as the kind of dad dancing in in the corner. Don't be that. Don't be that person. And actually, it's brilliant fun to talk to the younger employees that I work with and ask them questions. I mean, I can still input and come up with the stories that are going to be relevant, but I don't know necessarily the celebrities or personalities or influencers or, people online that you'd attach to those stories or would be the faces of or the ambassadors. And I don't pretend to, but I love learning who they are. And very often we'll have sessions whereby we'll discuss these people and, I'll ask who they, and they'll tell me these younger people love the fact that I'm not trying to pretend that I'm some know-it-all, person that's been there, seen there, done it, which I'm not anyway. And I love learning. I'm still learning about these things. Then I'll scribble it down and I'll go off and, go on the internet and I'll go on YouTube or whatever and I'll look at who these people are and familiarize myself with who these people are that they're saying relevant. So you can learn a lot off the younger people in your agency. It's fun and interesting for me. And part of the reason why I still do this, because I'm still learning every day. And I think for them, it's brilliant that they get to tell me stuff, and there's a lot of people that think, well, what can I tell him? What doesn't he know? Well, I don't know a hell of a lot. And you're the one there that's really teaching me. And I think it's really nice for other people in the business to know as well.
Yeah, I hear you. I think we're of the same vintage. We talked in the first episode about some of the campaign work that you'd done and the awards that they picked up. Tell us about the kind of lessons learned about picking up all these awards.
I mean, we got literally hundreds of things, and they're brilliant. For me, the awards that matter and the awards that we should focus on are campaign awards. I mean, agency awards are nice, and we get a bit hung up, and I see people's SIG files and their emails, best this agency of the year, best that agency of the year, best the other.
Can I stop you there? Can you stop you there, Graham? You're talking to the proud owner of the CIPR Small Agency of the Year award, but
with the exception of that particular award.
But no, I hear you.
The awards don't really matter. The awards don't really matter. I mean that's lovely, and I'm not knocking it. So that's lovely for particularly internally. I think that's got a massive value for staff knowing that they work in agency that has that award, because particularly the CIPR, it's a brilliant organisation, a brilliant body, brilliant professional body. But it also, there's other reasons that you win that award for other than your work. It's for your diversity, for your inclusion, for presumably the EAT process that you've gone through. Stuff like that is intrinsic in an agency award. But from a client point of view, clients for me care much more about your campaigns. Yeah. And we've won all these awards, campaigns and agency ones, but the ones that matter to me are the campaigns, because they're the ones that matter to clients. And I've never had a client phone up saying, "Oh, you've won agency of the year, consumer agency of the year last year. Can you be our agency?" They phone up or they email and say, "I see you did that campaign for Weetabix. I see you did that campaign for Ribford Organics. I see that campaign you did for Innocent Smoothies. We want another one of those. We want something like that. Can you do that for us?" That's what gets the new business going. Not so much, in my opinion, the agency awards. And perhaps agencies tend to get a little bit over obsessed with those, as opposed, and that to me then deflects a little bit off the quality of work that you're doing. And for me, the focus is on campaigns, focus on client campaigns, and the rest will follow. You do brilliant work, come up with brilliant ideas, he'll win the awards, and then the other clients will follow. And that's a healthier, I think, way to do it than we want to be this agency of the year, we want to be that agency of the year. I'm not knocking it, but I think the campaigns are more important.
Yeah, no, I hear you. When you kind of, you've taken a bit of time to reflect and draw the kind of 25 lessons from 25 years of Frank. If you kind of look forward now, how do you see the future for Frank? And now you're under the employee ownership, and how are things going to go in the future, do you think?
It's interesting with employee ownership. I don't know what your experiences is, and I think my experience is similar to, before I went down this route, I did speak to a couple of other agencies that had done it, not just PR agents. What they said, and I think it's the same here, is that it takes a while to sink in. Yeah. And I think, some employees get it who are beneficiaries. Not sure everyone does. We still have, as you probably have, we have our employee councils that feed back into the running of the business. So we have the right process in place to make it happen. But I still think it takes a bit of time to sink in. And we're only just over a year into being an EOT, and I think it's a bit of a work in progress for it to work. So that has affected things positively, but I think that will get more and more positive with time. And certainly one of the big ideas behind it is that you're going to get some people that will hopefully commit their futures to this business, because the longer they stay with the business, then the more benefit, bigger shareholding, if you like, or the biggest share of a beneficiary they become. So I think that it's going to be important developing the future leaders of tomorrow. Hopefully they'll do it within a culture that is still true to Frank's values. The focus for me is just on doing great work and having fun. And as I said, the rest tends to follow. As long as I can be around to facilitate that, I don't make it happen so much anymore. I'm a guardian of the culture, or not necessarily guardian, because I don't guard it, because I love the fact that it can mutate and go in different directions. But I can certainly, say, well, that's a Frank idea, or that isn't a Frank idea. And I can certainly say, well, this is what Frank Brand, Frank would do, or Frank should do. But it's free to go in whatever direction people want to take it now, because it's their business. And I'm personally really excited about what direction that will do. There's no prescription, there's no 3-year plan, there's no 5-year plan. There kind of never has been. We've never really looked further than, the year ahead. And that really, from a financial point of view, maybe a few things we want to do, because life can change very quickly. And, and things change sometimes overnight. So I'm not a massive one for too much planning. Certainly there's the right strategy and the right approach, and there's different directions we're gearing our business in. We're gearing our business up into sort of doubling down a bit more on social. So about 6 months ago, we launched Frank Social, Frank.social, as a separate brand under the Frank umbrella. So we've got Frank PR and Frank Social, because I think that says how this industry is really demarcating the two a bit more. And I think there's quite a lot of growth to come in the social side of PR, although the two are thoroughly integrated within our organization. Obviously, there's, we've got to grapple with some of the technological changes and what the impact of AI is going to be on our businesses. So we're kind of working at that. We've got a view on creativity, and we'll be launching something in the next few months, which is a third arm to our business, if you like, under the Frank umbrella, that is all about creativity, which I'm very excited about. I'm not gonna kind of spoil it just yet, but that all, again, creativity is core to our brand, core to our offer, so I can still be guiding the development of NPD, if you like, new product development, which I think is exciting, so we can take this business in more directions, and we'll continue to be pragmatic. If something happens in the next few months that we think is worth, jumping on, then we will. We're independent, we're nimble, and we can do stuff a bit on the spur of the moment if need be.
There speaks a man who sounds like, to me anyway, that you've definitely got your mojo still. Like when we've been talking for the last couple of hours, I've certainly got that sense that you've still got that sense of enjoyment, sense of fun, and
Absolutely.
that you know, enforcing that idea that be a dick still has relevance and is still kind of the kind of primary. The bit of the sticker rock that runs through everything that you do. When you kind of look back totally as a whole, what do you think other people in the industry might take from your journey? Just on, you know, like, as we kind of wrap this up, what's your reflection on it?
Well, I mean, as anyone can do whatever they want to do, and you know, you need a bit of luck, but you know, you make your own luck sometimes as you go along. You don't have to be the brightest. I mean, my qualifications are personally nothing to write home about, but you don't have to have that. Don't even need a degree to do well in this industry. You need the right attitude. It's, you know, we're lucky. It's a tremendous job. I think it's, you know, for me, it's never even felt like a job. I don't know what it's felt like for you, but to me, you know, I mean, obviously there have been some days that
I'm going to say some days, maybe.
Some days, but you know, I can't really think. Well, I forget them quite quickly anyway. But you know, every day I look, you know, gets to you know, the end of the weekend. I'm not dreading going into work on a Monday. I'm looking forward to that, you know, to coming into the office on Monday. It's always felt like that. And sometimes you've got to make that happen. You've got to have the right attitude, the right approach. You've got to be positive. You've got to make shit happen. You've got to never take no for an answer. You've got to have fun. And if it's not fun, you've got to try and make it fun. You've got to try and excite and infuse other people. If you've got a kind of a value that's really important for you, you know, mine's being disruptive, breaking that be a dick culture, you've got to try and share that with other people. If you want to create a creative culture, you've got to lead from the front sometimes as a business leader. And, you know, I'll get involved in all the ideas. I mean, luckily I've been fortunate enough to, you know, be in the root of many of the best ideas we come out with, but they're not always all my ideas. It's a culture that creates that than necessarily one person. So I'm excited to have created that, and I'm excited still to breathe as much life into that for as many years as possible.
Well, thank you so much for it. I mean, we could chat all day, but I'm sure you've got a PA there knocking on the window.
No PAs. Never been any, no PAs at Frank. No one. The person that's in here next after me wants to kick me out.
Yeah.
But that's it. No one. No. You always got plenty of time to talk about this journey, and you know, absolutely anyone that, you know, kind of is setting up an agency or has set one up, or kind of is stuck or doesn't know what to do, if they want to reach out to me, I'm always happy to have a chat with people, and do very often, you know, easily 2-3 times a week, I'm talking to people that are on the journey. And I guess it's another learning of mine over the years is be generous with your time. And I always have been. I've always talked to people. Sometimes you can't stop me talking, as you kind of realise when we're doing this podcast. But you know, it's been a brilliant journey. This industry has been brilliant to me, and any help I can give to anyone else who kind of has that glint in their eye and the desire to do it, then I'm always happy.
Well, that's a brilliant place to leave it. So thank you so much, Graham, for your time. And here's to the next 25 years at Frank. And yeah, thanks again for your time.
Tony, thanks for having me. Lovely chatting.
Thanks for listening to PR in the Real World. If you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could subscribe to the podcast and leave us a quick review. Your support really helps spread the word and reach more marketing and PR professionals just like you. And don't forget to share this podcast with your colleagues or anyone who'd benefit from the insights we share. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time for more tips, strategies and real world stories from the PR frontlines.